Welcome to Growing Pains, a podcast of the Sumner County Republican Freedom Caucus. I'm your host, Deanne DeWitt. When communities grow, as ours has in recent years, the pressure on leaders is intense. Pressure to figure out what's working, what's not, and fix it as fast as possible. The guest today has had that kind of pressure and endured that locally and at the state for many years. We are thrilled to have State Senator Ferrell Haile. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, the honor is all ours. But let me do a quick introduction, give some background, make sure, see if I can get all this right. You are at least sixth, maybe seventh generation Tennessean.
Correct.
Farmer.
Depends on which
line of the family tree we go down. Well, that's a hard way to go. That's a long way to go back either way. Yeah. But you've been a farmer, a business owner, a pilot, retired pharmacist, and now serving in our state Senate for 15 years. Speaker pro tem for the last 7.
Yes.
Proof positive that you are one of the most respected leaders across our state. And that's a big deal for those of us in Sumner County and Trousdale County. Your district, I know, includes both Sumner and Trousdale County.
Correct. Well, thank you for that. That's mighty kind.
It is all facts. It is all facts. And I feel confident that your legacy will stand forever as someone who was a champion for building strong families and protecting our children. And there's countless individuals that are in a debt of gratitude to you for all of that. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know this past summer you wrote an op-ed, and I think it was a great topic for our discussion for our podcast. Actually, ChatGPT even specifically said, this op-ed positions Senator Haile as a policymaker grounded in fiscal discipline and long-term community benefit. Perfect topic for Growing Pains.
I think I like her.
Yeah. Do you have a ChatGPT with a name yet?
No, I do not.
You don't? Okay. Well, I don't yet either, but it's coming. I have a feeling. There's a assistant level. I do a lot of thank yous, a lot of please, no thank yous. And she seems to appreciate it. So I can definitely feel the human touch. Okay. So your op-ed, it lays out a clear example of how smart public investment can help prepare for the future without growing government. So how do you define smart growth in a conservative framework?
I think one word, business. I had a number of years ago, back 15 years ago or so, I had a debate with a gentleman from the opposite party that I was representing in the conversation. And we were talking about education at that particular point in time, but government in general. And he made a comment that you can't run government like business. And I just totally disagreed with that. I think that's absolutely the way government needs to run is as a business. It's a big business, and it needs to be dealt with carefully, conservatively. You've got to have end results, just like you do in a business. When you invest in business, you invest for a return on that investment. So I think it needs to be looked at that way. The most frustrating thing to me, one of the most frustrating that has taken place in the adjustment from the private sector as a business owner into the public sector as an elected official, is that in business, you made a decision on Monday evening, Tuesday morning, you implemented it. Well, government doesn't work that way. And our founding fathers, I believe, intentionally made it not work that way because you don't need to be jumping from one place to another quickly. You need solid data, solid decision-making, solid discussion going forth on that before you actually pull the trigger, so to speak, on what a new endeavor might be. I think later on we're going to talk about Safe Baby Court, and I can talk about how long that took and the details of getting that off the ground. Whereas I would have made that decision one day and implemented the next. That's not the way government works.
Well, and I suppose that is for the long-term good, but it is.
I believe it is. You get really frustrated at times by it, but I do believe it's in the long-term good. We don't want our state to go bankrupt, our county to go bankrupt, so you need wise business decisions involved in the process.
So I think you've already kind of touched on it, but let's just talk about there's a distinction between investment and spending. And voters or people might think that they're all one and the same, but how do you distinguish those two?
You're going to love this analogy.
Oh.
But if you have 50 pairs of fairly new shoes in your closet and you go out and buy 3 more pair, that's spending. That's not investment.
Excellent. I get it. I follow.
You're blushing on that over there. I must have hit a chord. There's immediate gratification versus long-term stability.
Right.
Is one way that I would say that. I'd say it's pleasure versus long-term expectations. And so when we talk about conservative ideas then the difference between investment and spending, to me, that's the way you classify that. It's hard to define that, but I define it by the example that I used.
Well, that's a great example. And maybe that's a great transition point to the investments that you've helped shepherd through our state legislature related to safe baby courts and DCS and foster care, and the list goes on and on. Those are investments.
So we'll go back and talk about that if we have time here. I went to a couple of seminars that talked about adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. And when you go to our prisons and interview the inmates, they have a high number of ACEs. There's about 12 different categories of ACEs. It can be divorce in the home, abuse in the home, drug abuse, poverty, food insecurity, housing, jobs. There's about 12 of them. And when you go and interview inmates, those numbers are high. Yeah. They're really high. And a lot of that goes back to the home, what's taking place in the home. The brain development of an infant, from 80% of it takes place from 0 to 5 years old. When you have chronic ACEs, or chronic adverse childhood experiences, it affects that brain development and the learning ability of that child. So you see results of that in 3rd grade reading, and you just go right on up into the being incarcerated for many of these individuals. So if we can correct that when the child is young, from 0 to 5, then we have enhanced the opportunity. We've made an investment in that child's future for their adult, for them being an adult. Yeah. So that, to me, that is a wise investment.
With economic impact. I mean, at the end of the day.
Economic impact all the way through for the community, for the family, for the child. Unfortunately, in the General Assembly, Tennessee General Assembly, we don't calculate how many students, like in the Safe Baby arena, we don't calculate how many children are reinstated to their home or adopted into a good family, and how much money that saves 20 and 30 years down the road. Mm-hmm. That's a long-term look, and we don't calculate that. When we have a note on how much it costs to do a safe baby court, that savings is not included. But you have to mentally look at the data and figure out, all right, this is a wise investment.
Well, and thank goodness you do, because there, as you said, there's such an impact, and it has a major ripple effect on these families and their support group and the community that is coming alongside them. So
you surround those families with a coordinator of services. Rather than going before the judge once a month or once every other month, they are there's folks around them weekly, couple of times every week. And are the parents going to be able to work this program and be a solid foundation for their children, or are they not? And so we're putting them on a short course to make a determination. The goal is to get a child, average nationwide, a child that's in state custody takes 3 years to get to a permanent home. Mm-hmm. That's 3 of that 5 years of brain development. Let's shorten that. Our goal is 12 months. So we've got about 6 months to figure out whether the parents are going to be responsible and do whatever they need to do to be able to be a good parent. If they're not, then we need to start the process of moving on. Here's the good news out of that, is that we've had better than 1,000 children that have gone through the Safe Baby courts. About 50%, so about 500 of them have gone back with the biological family.
Wow.
And have not come back in state custody. To this date, we've only had 3 that have gone back that have come back into state custody. That's a win for the family, a win for the child, a win for society.
Absolutely.
And then there's been a percentage that have gone into kinship care, and that's stable for the child. Unfortunately, we had some that just have dropped out and said, we can't do this, we're going to drop out of this program, and they wind up back in juvenile court in a longer term solution for the children. But there's also those parents that come to realize that I cannot raise a child the way the foster parent has been doing. And there's this connection. There's a connection that's made. They're not separated. They're brought together in these meetings. And so it's referred to as an open adoption. And the parent walks into the judge and says, Judge, I'm here to surrender my child. That's a huge move on that parent's part. Yeah. But they realize or are not willing, one of the two, of being able to raise that child the way that they should. And I commend those folks that have the bravery to do that.
Absolutely.
And so that's a win also. So I'm real pleased with what we're doing. We're adding 3 or 4 courts a year across the state.
Sumner County was one of the first ones, if I'm not mistaken.
They were later.
Okay.
They were later. We started out with 7, and then we doubled that pretty quick, and we got up to 20 pretty quick. Sumner County came in around that 21 mark, somewhere in there. And right now we're at about 26, I think, headed toward 30.
Great.
So I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah, early adopters sometimes have to work through the kinks. So
yes, right,
that's a pretty good position.
Right. And I did not, even though Sumner County is my county, I did not push Sumner County into that because the folks that do this have to want to do it.
Right.
Because the judge and the coordinator of services all have to work together. That has to be a top priority for them, and they have to want to do it. Now we've got folks calling us. When we started, it was pretty difficult to find. We kind of had to sell this to some folks, that first 7. But once they got started and began getting results, then folks began to understand and want to become part of it.
Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how leadership at your level is never easy, and I think that you are an incredible example of staying above the fray and staying positive. But how do you do that? How do you stay focused on results when the political noise gets loud? When all these great things you're talking about, even that can be kind of twisted and turned by folks who just
I've never considered myself a politician. In fact, when I first referred that way, you look up on Google and Ferrell Haile, state politician, please deliver me from that. So I'm not really that political, even though I'm in a political office. I go back a lot. I have a picture hanging in my office of Howard Baker. And Howard Baker was going on and on about some issue, and his father-in-law was a senator. In fact, his father-in-law was minority leader of the U.S. Senate at the time. I
didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah. And after Howard went on and on, he came to Howard and said, Howard, you really need to listen. You might learn something along the way. So I have that picture up there to remind me to listen.
Perfect.
For what other people say. From what point of view they're coming. I may be totally opposed going in, and they might change me to some degree. They might not. I might change their thought, but I need to listen to what they're saying. I need to have that perspective where that there may be a way to get what I think is a good program in place by listening. And actually that took place with the Safe Baby Court. I brought in Commissioner of Mental Health and of DCS and AOC, which is the judiciary. And my ideas of how that was going to fit together was not necessarily theirs. But we came to a compromise in that to make that work. Unfortunately, the word compromise has gotten to be a negative word in our vocabulary politically. It should not be.
Right.
You don't always have all the right ideas. And so you need to listen to what other folks are saying and then try and formulate what you think's the best plan going forward. And that's what you do in business. You look at what other folks have done and what's successful and what's not, and you try to utilize that.
Yeah. Well, Howard Baker is an extraordinary example. And
Right.
I've been in your office before. I guess I didn't notice that picture. I'll have to look for it next time.
Yeah. It's actually, if you recall the round desk that we have in the office,
Sure.
it's where I usually see it. It's where right up there.
Subtle but important. I got it. Okay. Well, I'm going to shift gears on you again a little bit. We've kind of talked about this already, though, with the op-ed and this concept of growth and growing pains is definitely a topic worth us talking about. So what are your thoughts? How does citizens help make sure that growth remains guided more by principle than politics?
Well, you're always going to have politics in that, but what you want the principle guiding the politics is the comment that I would make about that. The Tennessee is a great state to live in. I think it's the best. We're number one in so many categories. We're the lowest debt per capita of any state, the lowest local taxes and state taxes of any state. And that's documented. Folks question that, but we're by far the lowest. And we don't have a state income tax. So that's going to attract people. If you want to stop growth, there's ways to do it, but you won't like it.
That doesn't sound like anything anybody here would get behind, right?
You don't like it. I was at a meeting where that folks were talking about stopping growth or hindering growth, or we've got to do something about this. And I waited till the end and just made a comment. I said, if you want to stop growth, defund the roads, defund law enforcement, defund schools, defund economic development, and raise taxes and fees, and you can stop growth in about 15 years.
No problem.
And and the value of your property is going to go down, and you're not going to live here because the roads are just an absolute mess, and the schools are a mess,
right.
And the law enforcement's not coming when you call, and fire doesn't show up.
We can't help that we have a good thing going.
Right.
And we do. We have all these things going the right direction.
Right. And everyone was thrilled and still thrilled that we don't have an income tax. But that's number one target for folks in a lot of the liberal states to move. They're looking for that type of form of government.
So as we look ahead, what do you think is the most important investment we can make to ensure that growth stays smart, sustainable, true to our values? Is there any magic potion you have, or?
Yeah, and I'm going to deviate just a little bit from your question, from the growth part of that to what sustains our communities and what makes our communities stable, and that's families.
Yeah.
Families and children, education, the things that I just mentioned, good roads, good schools, economic
Safe
development,
neighborhoods.
all those things play a part in how that forms. We do need to have some, I don't want to use the word restraints because I don't think that's an American way. We want our freedom.
Right.
And so freedom costs us one way or the other, whichever way you want to pay for it. A lot of folks have died for the freedom that we enjoy, but you also have to make some sacrifices here at home for the freedom that you enjoy. And having my way all the time is I have to give up some of that if I'm going to have freedom, because I can't dictate to to my neighbor
right.
everything that they do or don't do. I have a story on that affects my farm. When electricity became available, rural electricity came long after the cities got it, and electricity was coming out toward Cairo. Mm. And the owners of the property at that time said, we don't want it. We don't need it. We don't want it. And now there are electric poles across the middle of my field rather than coming up the fence line because of that decision that they made. And my dad, long ago, somewhere I think it was Hartsville Pike, Highway 25 going toward Hartsville, they were talking about widening that road, and there were folks that didn't want to do that. And he said, you cannot stop progress.
Well, on that note, I think that's a perfect end statement. Senator, thank you for your observations, for your tireless work. You are truly a blessing to our community. And I just appreciate what you've shared today, and I hope maybe sometime we get to have you back.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, honor that you invite me.
Okay. Till next time.
Till next time.